Okay, so following on from the video I made on who may be our next British Prime Minister, 54th British Prime Minister, I've decided to make a video speculating on who will be the candidates for 2016. I should say this is not necessarily my speculation. I'm looking at Wikipedia. Granted, it's not the most reliable source, but it is the most convenient and it's easiest to just read off. So I'll discuss that a little bit. Firstly, before I continue, in regards to my British Prime Minister's video, one name I forgot to mention was Michael Gove, the Education Secretary. He's quite a big name. He certainly, I think he's gets more attention than an average Education Secretary would get, so he is a potential successor to David Cameron. He's clever, he's controversial, which sometimes in politics is not a bad thing. So he could be a name in there. Anyway, without further ado, these are some of the names that have been raised for being possible candidates in 2016. Now, what I'm going to do is just read from the list and maybe say one or two things about them, or if there isn't already things to be said. Firstly, the Democrats. And incidentally, there's still 2 years to go to the election, so people might say, well, why now? American election cycles tend to begin very early, so speculation tends to begin early as well. And basically it's just for fun. This shouldn't be seen as a particularly partisan video. I'm broadly more democratic in my sympathies, broadly speaking, but obviously I'm an outsider, I'm not American, so this is purely reflections. And it's just for fun. The guessing game can be quite amusing. Can be quite fun. So, Democrats. These are some of candidates who have already filed with the Federal Election Commission, and usually people who file early are considered to be fringe candidates. I think that's definitely the case with these guys. Jeff Boss. He's a conspiracy theorist and perennial candidate from New Jersey. I've seen a few videos of the guy, and he's definitely a fringe candidate. Vermin Supreme. Performance artist and perennial candidate from Massachusetts, and he's a deliberately comedy candidate. He's not a serious candidate, the equivalent of our Munster Raving Loony Party. Robbie Wells is a former head football coach at Savannah State University. He was a candidate in 2012 for the Constitution Party of the United States. I said this is Democratic candidates, but well, he's now announced he would run as a Democrat. He's not a well-known figure, and I don't think he'd be seen as a heavyweight contender. Now, the following people are better-known individuals, and they have publicly expressed interest. Joe Biden, Vice President. Biden, of course, has ran before in 1988 and 2008. He'd done reasonably well, but and of course now he is Vice President, so he's a big name. He will be, I believe, 72 in 2016. Just a word about the age factor. I don't think that should be a major factor, because for one thing you have Bob Dole and John McCain both ran as Republican candidates. They were well into their 70s. Ronald Reagan, of course, became president at the age of 69. So I don't think we should weigh too much on the age factor. Obviously, the most important thing is if it's a very energy consuming job, so the most important thing is if they have the energy to do it. But to me, this is just my opinion, but Joe Biden is a youthful 70-year-old. He doesn't strike me as an old man. He strikes me as quite a youthful 70-year-old, so I don't think that's going to be a big factor for him. Although it would mean if he won 2 terms he'd be in his 80s when he left the White House, so that has to be considered. Hillary Clinton, she's probably, well, in fact, no probably about it, she is the best known of the potential Democratic candidates. She's a political heavyweight. I really don't need to give her much of an introduction. Former First Lady, former Secretary of State, a very, very strong political force, very influential. Came very close to winning the 2008 race. It's sort of been seen for a long time now that if Hillary runs, Hillary will get the nomination. If Hillary doesn't run, I think it will be quite interesting. And at this point I'd like to make a point about, in fact I may go into another video because this may take a while, but if Hillary runs and she wins, it will be historic because obviously she'll be the first woman president. But there'll be another side to it which will be somewhat boring, and that is the fact there'll be another Clinton in the White House. Now, it's not that I have anything against a Clinton in the White House, but it gets somewhat boring. It will be basically a case over 30 plus years of Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Clinton, with only Obama as an intermittent thing. So I think Americans will be very skeptical of having two dynasties basically running America. I mean, the whole point about America is it was founded as a republic, of course breaking from the United Kingdom and against the monarchy system. So if you have a handful of families continuously occupying the White House, it's going to be seen as... I think Clinton would have a better chance than Jeb Bush, not because Bush isn't a serious contender, but because a third Bush would be really... Even former First Lady Barbara Bush has raised skepticism about that, although she believes her son would be the best candidate. The Oliver Stone film, of course, W, indicates that the Bush patriarchy and matriarchy wanted Jeb Bush and not George to run for president. But anyway, I think if Hillary runs, she's a very strong chance. She'll be 68, so she'll be one of the older presidents, but again, she's quite youthful. 68-year-old, I don't think it's going to be a factor. If she runs, I think she has a very strong chance of winning. So for the Republicans, their number one question coming up to election time is who can beat Hillary. Of course, Hillary is being very subtle about it. She's not giving anything away whether she's going to run or not. She's expressed interest, but she's not giving anything away. That's very clever. Probably because she doesn't want the Republicans to be forming a strategy this early on. Personally, I think politics is in Hillary Clinton's blood. I think she will run. I'd be very surprised if she doesn't. And I would be very surprised if she didn't win. Harding, chairman of the Democratic National Committee, former governor of Vermont. He was a presidential candidate in 2004. Again, he's quite a big name. I think he's a reasonable chance. Joe Manchin, U.S. Senator from West Virginia since 2010, governor of West Virginia between 2005 and 2010. I don't think he's a household name. I wouldn't call him a heavyweight contender. But basically, any candidate who's been a former governor or former senator, I would say, has a reasonable chance. But unfortunately, name recognition is important. I say unfortunately because that sort of lends into the notion of image politics. But I think name recognition is an important thing, because when you want to be leader of a country of 300 million people, even if someone is well known in their own state, you really need a national appeal. The first three people I mentioned, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Harding, do have a national appeal. Martin O'Malley, the governor of Maryland since 2007, mayor of Baltimore, he's Irish American. He looks presidential. He's good looking. To me, he looks presidential. He looks like a leader. Again, it shouldn't be about that, but it is significant. I think he's a reasonable chance, actually. He's relatively young. He's a strong governor, from what I understand. So he could be an interesting contender. I would actually speculate a Clinton-O'Malley ticket could be a strong ticket for the Democrats. And interesting, that's another thing that I might talk a little bit about, is potential tickets. Clinton-O'Malley could be interesting. Ed Rendell, governor of Pennsylvania. I've never heard of the guy before. He's a former mayor of Philadelphia. Bernie Sanders, independent U.S. senator from Vermont. Independent U.S. representative from Vermont. I assume he's registered as a Democrat now. Brian Schweitzer, the governor of Montana between 2005 and 2013. Montana is a big state, so running a big state is a good pedigree. He has been mentioned as a viable candidate a few times. Jim Webb, senator from Virginia, U.S. Secretary of the Navy in the late 80s. He could be an interesting figure. He could be a good bipartisan figure. I mean, it says he was Secretary of the Navy 87 to 88. Presumably that was at the end of Reagan's tenure, so he could be an interesting figure. Other potential candidates: Tammy Baldwin, U.S. Senator from Wisconsin. Steve Bullock, Governor of Montana since 2013 and the Attorney General of Montana. George Clooney, Need I make any introduction? He's an actor and filmmaker. Of course, it wouldn't be the first time an actor's become president. Clooney is not just an actor, he's very politically active. I actually could see him as a serious candidate. I mean, if Ronald Reagan, who was, let's face it, not a wonderful actor, could do it, George Clooney, who was a better actor than Ronald Reagan was, and who has a real humanitarian appeal and who's very politically active, I think he could be a serious candidate. He's only in his early 50s, so yeah, I think it could be serious. I don't think that's I do think it could be a serious candidate. I would also say Angelina Jolie, although she hasn't expressed interest. I think she could be a serious candidate. And I don't think it's a joke just because they're actors. I think, they have it showing a lot of, any actor that shows a serious political interest surely needs to be mentioned. Andrew Cuomo, Governor of New York. Oh, by the way, another thing about being an actor, obviously you recognise. Andrew Cuomo, Governor of New York, Attorney General of New York, U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in the late Clinton administration. He's a serious candidate. New York, of course, is one of the big states, so I think he's a serious candidate. Rahm Emanuel, Mayor of Chicago, former White House Chief of Staff, representative from Illinois. I think he could be a serious candidate. Ross Feingold, U.S. Special Representative for the African Great Lakes region, U.S. Senator from Wisconsin. Al Gore, of course, he had that very painful defeat to George Bush in 2000, which was the most controversial election since 1876. Of course, Hayes-Tilden showdown. Al Gore should have been president. He won more popular votes. I don't know if Gore would run again, simply because getting that close and losing, people forget. I mean, they're forgetting there is a personal factor in this, whether or not people want to run. And losing a presidential race is a very painful thing. Although it's happened before. Of course, Nixon lost in 1960, ran again in 68 and won. So it wouldn't be impossible. The only thing with Gore is he's not. Whilst I personally like the man, I don't think he's the most exciting candidate, and that may go against him. Luis Gutierrez, I'm not familiar with this guy, U.S. Representative from Illinois, and member of the Chicago City Council. Maggie Hassan, Governor of New Hampshire since 2013. John Hickenlooper, Governor of Colorado since 2011. Amy Klobuchar, U.S. Senator from Minnesota. That's not a name I know. William H. McRaven, retired admiral and former commander of the U.S. Special Operations Command. That's not a name I know. Janet Napolitano, obviously, is former governor of Arizona, U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, president of the University of California. Jay Nixon, governor of Missouri. I think this year's Almess and Ferguson could go against him. Antonio Filagarosa is a former mayor of Los Angeles. Mark Warner, who has been a presidential candidate before, senator from Virginia, governor of Virginia. Elizabeth Warren, U.S. Senator from Massachusetts since 2013. She's been named a number of times, although she's been very quick to deny that she's running. Other people have been named as potential candidates, but that interest has sort of faded away. Mike Beebe, Michael Bennett, Christian Gregoire, Kamala Harris, Tim Kaine, Gary Locke, Jack Markell, Robert Wright, Kathleen Sebelius, and declined. These are people who've openly declined. Evan Baugh, Michael Bloomberg, Cory Booker, Jerry Brown, Sherrod Brown, Julian Castro, Bill de Blasio, Kirsten Gillibrand, John Kerry, Dennis Kucinich, DeVal Patrick. John Kerry, of course, ran in 2004. Julian Castro would be an interesting Latino candidate, but he's declined. So that's the Democrats. Just in the last few minutes, some potential matchups as tickets I think might be interesting. Assuming Clinton is the candidate, who could she run with? Well, I think both sides are going to be looking strongly at the Latino vote, because the big thing in 2008 was an African American candidate, of course, Obama. Now the big thing, I think, in my opinion, is going to be the Latino vote. So if Clinton runs, I think she may have a Latino on her ticket. That's not to say that she has to, but The question is who? Who is a big enough name to do that? One name that is not named at all there, which I think is surprising, is Bill Richardson. He's ran before. He's quite a big name. I'm surprised he's not named at all there. I'm not sure whether that's because he's declined, or I don't know why, but before I have considered a Clinton Richardson ticket. Anyway, let me know your thoughts.